Good morning and welcome to Shekema and to everyone on the screen. It's delightful to be here and listen to Shekema share her dissertation defense. For those who may be first-time attendees of a dissertation defense, this event is the culmination of lots of work on the part of a doctoral candidate. And so today we will be hearing about the study that Shekema designed and delivered and analyzed and summarized. And she has prepared a presentation to detail the purpose of her study, the need for her study, and her findings, and how we can use this information to move forward the field of education. In a dissertation defense, hence the name, a candidate defends their work. They defend their academic work. And so we will be hearing about her rationale and the importance of this study. So we will begin. Shekema will deliver her presentation, and then her committee members will ask questions of her study and ask for her insight and clarifying questions. So thank you so much for joining us all. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Bronwyn McFarland, and I'm her dissertation chair. And I will turn it over to Dr. Elder.
Welcome, everyone. This is exciting to have so many here to celebrate with Shekema. I know that you all built a community in your cohort and, of course, in your family, Shekema. So this is a huge deal for you, and I'm so glad you have so many friends and family to join us. I'm Jody Elder, and I'm a full-time middle school principal and part-time dissertation mentor, and I was blessed to meet Shekema 3 years ago. And so this has been a long journey. And so whenever she's ready, Dr. Akbari, would you like to introduce as well?
Hello, I'm Dr. Christina Akbari. I'm an associate professor here at A-State. In my area, I'm in the Department of Communication Disorders, actually. And I have enjoyed being on Shekema's committee, and I look forward to her presentation today. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, Shekema will let you take over. I'm going to mute and share with us your research. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, good morning, everybody. My name is Shekema Dunlap, and I'm delighted to be here to share with you this is my life's passion. Being a Black teacher and inspiring other Black teachers, that is, I feel like, what I was born to do. And so my study is entitled With Revolutionary Love, an Endarkened Narrative Inquiry of Black Students' Remembered Experiences in a Black English Teacher's Classroom as Influential to Them Becoming Teachers. So I want to say thank you to my committee members, Dr. McFarlane for being my chair, Dr. Elder for being my mentor and guiding me through this entire process. There's no way I'd be here today without your assistance. And thank you, Dr. Akbari, for joining us and agreeing to serve as the third member. I'm so overwhelmed with gratitude today. So thank you for being here with me in this moment. I wanted to take a moment and dedicate this presentation today to my Black teacher, the teacher who my apologies, everyone. Reverend Dr. Shirlene Holmes. Everything I am as a Black teacher is because of her. She called me doctor the first time she met me as an undergraduate. She was a mother to every Black student on the campus of Georgia State University. And I had every expectation that she would be here with me today. When I talked to her at the beginning, I had informed her that my committee had all 5 of my chapters and that I was waiting for my feedback and to prepare for my defense. And when I reached out to her on Tuesday to make sure she was in place for this morning, I found out that she had transitioned on June 26th. So this is about her today for me, because I'm her legacy. And so I ask that you just pray me through this moment. But this was her stance to life. This is the best picture that I could find to just symbolize who she was. First Black tenured professor in the Georgia State University Department of Communications. And she's my why as a Black teacher. She's the one who taught me that you are not dead unless people stop calling your name. So she is now among my ancestors. So I'm proud to call your name this morning, Doc. I miss you. The problem to be addressed in this study is the Black teacher shortage. In the decades since Brown versus the Board of Topeka, Kansas, 1954 decision, the number of Black teachers within the profession has steadily declined. So let's look at Black teachers by the numbers. So prior to Brown, Black principals and teachers comprised 35 to 50% of the educated workforce in the 17 states with segregated school systems. That was approximately 87,000 teachers. Between 1975 and 1985, the number of Black students majoring in education also declined by 66%, and another 21,515 Black teachers lost their jobs between 1984 and 1989. Presently, Black teachers comprise approximately 7% of the nation's teacher force, while Black principals represent 11% of the nation's educational leaders. So the literature review for the study took, I did a historical overview. And so I looked at the history of Black education in America pre-Brown. I had segments on pre-emancipation, Reconstruction Black education, the rise of the Black educational disparities, and then the landmark decision of Plessy versus Ferguson in 1982 and how it impacted public education in America. In the post-Brown section of my literature review, I looked at what we lost, right? Because Brown is typically seen as one of those watershed moments in history where, you know, everybody gained, right? We became this pluralist society and everyone gained because of integration. But Black people lost something in integration. We lost a significant number of Black educators, but which we've never recovered. Black teachers' responses to Brown have become theoretical in the form of critical race theory in education. Shout out to Gloria Ladson-Billings. We've talked a lot about interest convergence and how everything that we did gain as a result of Brown was simply as a form of interest convergence, where the greater society gained as a result of doing something good for Black people, then those are the gains that we got. However, when it was solely for the good of Black people, we've never gotten really anything. So we talked about intersectionality and its influence on academic achievement, students' rights to their own language, which I centered in this particular study. Black language, even as an English teacher, is a hallmark of what I do in my classroom. And I also focus on Wom-Demenda pedagogy and other mothering. The final section of the literature review focused on the roles of Black teachers as a form of an evolution. We focus on teaching as activism, African-American pedagogical excellence, characteristics of effective Black teachers, such as servers of soul food, teaching as spiritual praxis. We are rememberers. We do the remembering for our culture, but then we also put our culture back together, right? So that is the remembering aspect. We are fugitive pedagogues. We are the designers and the perfecters of Black students' sense of belonging in the classroom. And in short, in honor of Dr. Gloria Boutte, we be loving Black children. So here are some studies that most impacted my study. So Acosta et al. Designed a pedagogical framework entitled African-American Pedagogical Excellence. And offered it as a plausible foundation from which to reconceptualize pedagogies of social justice. AAPE has 3 distinct parts, including ideology, beliefs, and instructional practices. What Acosta et al. Found is that African-American teachers conceptualize care within the realm of African-American socialization, in which the teacher's care is connected to the larger philosophy of African-American education. Freedom for literacy, literacy for freedom, racial uplift, and for citizenship. And so in honor of AAPE, I have an image of Susie King Taylor, Civil War educator and nurse, and this is courtesy of the Library of Congress. Another study that impacted was Lassane's, the Black teaching tradition. Lassane drew upon the work of Acosta et al. And Elamine and Mitchell to create what she called the Black teaching tradition. And so in this image, you'll see that she has compared the Black teaching tradition's characteristics to Black liberatory pedagogy and to African-American pedagogical excellence. And what she found was that the exceptional Black teachers that she studied served as an advocate, bridge, and community member or extended family member for their students. And they embodied what she called answering, believing, caring, and overcoming. And I'll give you just a moment to take a look at how those different frameworks line up. What you'll see is that there's always this sense of professionalism, political clarity, racial uplift, affirmative views, and strong racial identities, and this ethic of care. And that is where those three frameworks align. Another study is Dillard and Neal. Dillard and Neal was grounded in Endarkened feminist epistemology, which is what this study is also grounded in. They included examinations of the role of spirituality and community as crucial supports for culturally sustained teaching by Black women teachers in the US. They questioned the role of Ubuntu, and that is in other, African-centered principles, I am because you are. How do those African-centered principles apply in effective Black teaching? Their narratives revealed that Black women teachers embracing Ubuntu pedagogy would require a radical reconceptualization from initial teacher preparation to continued professional development that is based in remembering who we are and what we do as Black women teachers embedded in our global humanity. And so what this study basically described was that, yes, the work can be done, but it requires an undoing, if you will. Most of us have been educated in colonized educational systems. Most of us have been prepared in colonized teacher preparation programs. And so for the work, even for Black teachers, for the work to begin, there has to be some unlearning and unremembering in order to become who we fully are as teachers. And I will touch on that a little bit more as I describe my experience with this particular study. Acosta and Hayes used observational and narrative data from 2 qualitative studies on Black educator pedagogy to focus on the praxis of Black intellectual thought and action from the documented perspectives and practices of exemplary Black teachers. So they did 2 studies, and study 1 highlighted a Black woman teacher strategy for building classroom community by promoting a sense of belonging, while study 2 employed narratives from exemplary Black teachers over time in place. What they uncovered was a pedagogical framework consisting of solidarity with the Black community, emphasis on teaching for life, and connecting teacher participants' instructional practices to a common purpose for educating Black children, including centering African-American vernacular English. Last but certainly not least, Boutte, Johnson, and King, and I have several Boutte and et al., so that's why I'm specific here, that is Boutte, Johnson, and King. They call for a scholarly return to Black love in K-12 and university settings as an antidote to ever-present anti-Black violence. Like this present study that I conducted, Boutte, Jackson, and Johnson relied on narrative inquiry and autoethnography, methodological tools for data collection and analysis to frame their experiences as freedom scholars. Loving Black teachers, loving their Black students, is rooted in knowledge of historical treatment of Black people in the African diasporic context. And our desire to decolonize and disrupt systemic racism within P-12 settings requires this love. Love mandates liberation because loving Black children is revolutionary. So there are 3 purposes for this study. The first was to describe the relationship between 3 Black students' experiences in with their Black teacher, and whether those experiences influenced their career choice to become Black teachers. The second was to investigate whether Black students' experiences receiving revolutionary love from their Black teacher influenced their pedagogical practices. So basically, I wanted to know, whether the students' experiences in my classroom were influential in their career choice to become teachers. And the next thing I wanted to know was, even if those experiences did not influence their decision to become teachers, I wanted to know if they at least embodied some of those, what I coined revolutionary love tactics in their current classrooms today. And the third was to conduct critical educational in the time of crisis that adds to the body of decolonized educational research. We are in a critical time regarding the Black teacher shortage. And as I conducted this study, we were also in a critical time of the COVID pandemic. And so those two together certainly add up to a time of crisis. My research questions were as follows. What are 3 Black students' lived experiences in a Black teacher's classroom? What role did revolutionary love play in the Black students' experiences in the Black teacher's classroom? In what ways did the Black students' experiences receiving revolutionary love from their Black teacher influence their decisions to become classroom teachers? And how did receiving revolutionary love from a Black teacher influence the praxis of the Black students who became teachers? So a little note on what was kind of like the overarching idea as I was doing this story. I revisited Bell Hooks' Teaching to Transgress, and I have had it on repeat consistently since I've been doing this study. And I decided that I wanted to research teaching as transgression, okay? And this quote from Bell Hooks' Teaching to Transgress kind of summarizes my philosophy as I engaged in the study. I came to theory because I was hurting. The pain within was so intense that I could not go on living. I came to theory desperate, wanting to comprehend, to grasp what was happening around and within me. Most importantly, I wanted to make the hurt go away. I sought in theory then a location for healing. And so I wanted you all to know that this study has been about my healing, and I hope that it has provided healing for those who participated in the study. And I hope that in some way, those of you who are under the sound of my voice can also experience some healing as a result. My first theoretical framework is Endarkened feminist epistemology, and this is from Dr. Cynthia Dillard. The expansion of Black feminist thought is what Endarkened feminist epistemology is. It's a celebration of African-American wisdom, our language, our epistemologies and academic research, and it centers non-religious spirituality, okay? So it's a disruption of academic language and research methodologies that enforce the separation of the researcher from the researched. It prevents us from, considering ourselves the knower and the known, okay? In this way, we are all the knowers and we're all seeking to be known. And as a metaphor, Black Endarkened feminist epistemology is research as responsibility. We're answerable and obligated to every one of the persons and communities being engaged within the study. And I hope that I have done that in my work. The second theoretical framework guide in this study is fugitive pedagogy, and that's by Dr. Jarvis Gibbons. Fugitive pedagogy is a practice of writing about education as Black people experienced it in the interstices of this liminal reality, wedged between their collective striving and the anti-Black domination they sought to escape. Fugitive pedagogy asks, what has been the nature of Black people's relationship to the American school? And finally, though Black students' voices rarely appear in formal school records and research, they are crucial to understanding the impact of fugitivity in Black teachers' classrooms. And so Black teachers have always had this way of, one thing is on the board when we're being observed, but when the doors are closed, we do whatever we need to do to make sure our babies have. And so at its heart, that's what fugitive pedagogy is about. And students' voices describing how that pedagogy has impacted and influenced them is a center of what fugitive pedagogy in my research means to me as a scholar. So the significance of the study is that it challenges existing Black teachers to heed the voices represented in this study and consider their influence on recruiting and retaining the next generation of Black teachers. Adeleke called for further study of Black high school students' perceptions of the teaching profession. And so she, in her study on teachers and asking them, why they became teachers, and then she said that students' voices are necessary. And so I decided that I would study teachers who were my former students, and I happened to teach them how to teach while they were inside my classroom. So I knew they had been exposed to pedagogy. I knew they had been exposed to the, lesson planning and unit planning. They had actually gone throughout the school and taught lessons in other teachers' classrooms. And so I felt like this was the perfect group of students to study to answer Adeleke's question. And Black students' perceptions of revolutionary love will contribute to Black teachers' awareness of the transformational power of love within the classroom. this is, for me, and we have a phrase in my community that's what's understood doesn't have to be explained. But I still think that, and I want to, go back to what Dr. Dilla said about the unlearning. We have so much unlearning to do in order to fully love ourselves. And so I do not take for granted that Black teachers still might need to be taught how to fully and appropriately love their Black students. So my population is sample. So all of them are Southern K through 12 Black teachers, 25 to 30 years old. I had male and female participants. All of them attended a metropolitan Atlanta high school from the academic years of 2010 to 2013. And these are some images of my classroom with those students. There were 3 participants. Again, we're doing narrative inquiry, so that's the numbers typically 1 to 2, but for this one, I wanted to do 3 just to make sure that there was some trustworthiness there. Researchers, there were my former high school students. I taught them advanced placement English. And a note about that, even though they were all in advanced placement English, they were not all necessarily identified as honors or gifted. I took the open enrollment policy to heart. And so every student that I taught was welcomed, whether they were, some of them had failed, previous English classes before. So I did not do that gatekeeper mechanism where they had to be referred by other teachers. I knew that if I could just give these students a chance, then I would give them a better opportunity to succeed in life, even if they did not pass the AP exam. And so this convenience sample helped me understand how the participants experienced revolutionary love in my classroom as a Black teacher. So for my methodology, this is a qualitative study, and I relied on ENDARKENED narrative inquiry, and that was McClish Boyd and Bhattacharya. Bhattacharya is another scholar that I know I could not have made it through this far without. ENDARKENED narrative inquiry focuses on the analytical improvisations that privilege Black women's experiences and stories. And so what I drew from their particular story is this desire to build community, right, around a common struggle, and that there are allies, right? Not all of your help will come from Black scholars, but they will also come from critical scholars, people who are willing to learn and unlearn with you, people who are learning to grow with you. And ENDARKENED narrative inquiry, it focuses on the struggles, but more so of Black women. So, life be life, but Black women stay winning. That's what I love about ENDARKENED narrative inquiry. For my instruments, I used open-ended interviews. We held a focus group. The participant co-researchers wrote their autoethnographies. So they had an option of writing life history narratives. Some of them also wrote epistles or letters to their future selves. And some of them also wrote letters to their future students, encouraging them to be teachers, speaking to them as colleagues in their teacher voices. And then I wrote autoethnography, more so in the form of a call and response. I wanted to document my journey as a decolonizing scholar. I wanted to speak to their experiences, because I realized as a teacher, what I thought my students were getting might not have been what they were getting. And so in this way, I was able to be reflexive through my own autographic responses. And so I did not have IRB approval for them to do the research with me, but they were writing autoethnographies, which are typically not required to have IRB. And I did write in my IRB protocol that they would be submitting their autoethnographies. And so that is why I felt comfortable adding them as co-researchers. It didn't feel ethical to me to be sitting here, getting my doctorate and to whatever publications I'll have as a result based on their knowledge. Right. I'm not able to properly compensate them for their time and effort in this study. And so that was my way of honoring them. For me, that was an ethical decision. And so another quote from Teaching to Transgress that helps me think about my study in this way is that we cannot enter struggle as objects in order to later become subjects. Okay. And so they're not the objects of this study. We are all the subjects and the objects together. So this is about my authenticity and intentionality. This is a decolonizing study. right? And I believe that in a colonized academy, objective truth with a capital T is elusive. I don't think we'll find it, right? But we can be honest and authentic and intentional about the moves that we make as scholars. And the current study makes sense of a specific cultural phenomenon through personal subjective experiences. Theoretical foundations, principal components, and practical applications of decolonizing research methodology are discussed and debated in scholarly circles. However, there's no standard model or practice regarding what decolonizing research looks like. And so I'm actually really authentic in this presentation about some of the struggles, some of the improvisations I made, and just some of the surprises that happened within me as far as personal growth as a scholar as I was doing this work. So I had 3 phases of data collection. We used guided conversations. So we had interviews. I originally started off with open-ended, but I think they were more semi-structured. Maybe about 3 of them were semi-structured, but the vast majority were open-ended. Participants chose the incidents most relevant to discuss. And so they didn't have to answer all of the questions, exactly which ones they wanted to respond to. And then I sent them open-ended writing prompts via email, and then they sent whatever they wanted to send back, their responses to that, just like they did in my AP Lit class. I gave them the writing prompt and then they responded. So it was very authentic to our experience and together. And so we member checked together to the interview questions, and we member checked with their writing. But I also put the writing in there unredacted, right? I put it in there exactly as they gave it to me. There were some, to me, it felt like I needed to honor exactly how they came to me, exactly how they presented themselves. So when you read the dissertation, you'll notice that I put in their accounts, the 3rd type of data. I put that in there exactly as they gave it to me. And in that way, we examined multiple layers of consciousness, and we connected our personal and cultural experiences. So my assumptions were that the participant co-researchers' life stories and their epistles were truthful because their responses were self-reported. I assumed that we shared a cultural and professional background. We are all Black, we're all African-American, and we're all educators, we're all in the South. And I assume that reinforced the trustworthiness of the data, right? We were honest with each other. We were transparent about our whys. I assume that the critical incident accounts they shared within the interviews, focus group, and their narratives represented the participants' typical experiences inside of their classroom with me, which is why I did the focus group, because they were actually able to interrogate those experiences amongst themselves, right? To make sure that, like, that part, tell me what part I missed. And so that was so enlightening to me. And then the final assumption was that our shared Black cultural experiences influenced the outcomes of this study. I assumed that it would. The limitations and limitations. So my limitations were that the study results are not generalizable. These are 3 Black former students who became teachers talking about their experiences in 1 Black teacher's classroom. They're not generalizable. However, based on what I found in the literature review and based on the experiences that the 4 of us shared in this study, I do believe that there are some consistencies with our experiences and what the research already says about Black teachers and Black students' experiences in their classroom. The time required to collect the students' life history narratives was extensive. You have to give people time when they're doing that kind of writing. Autoethnography sometimes is kind of shunned, like it's less than other methodologies, but it cuts you to your core in ways that other things will not. Right? You can't lie to yourself, and so that's it takes time. Sometimes there's some trauma attached to it. And so that is one of the limitations for that kind of data collection. And then self-reported memories can create issues of trustworthiness and researcher bias for those unfamiliar with decolonizing research. And notice I say for those unfamiliar with decolonizing research. Those who are doing decolonizing research understand that our experiences and our shared memories, especially when we have others around who can triangulate and corroborate those stories, exactly what we're looking for in our research. The delimitation study participation was voluntary. Each of the participant co-researchers were my former students. Again, we shared a cultural and professional background. The scope of the study was limited to kinship or familial type of love. So that was the only type of love I studied, right? So when I talk about revolutionary love, I'm talking about the kinship type of love between a student and her, students and their teacher. And then the life history narratives focus on the years 2010 to 2013. So data analysis, how it started. Okay, so I went in and I'm like, I'm decolonizing this whole thing. I'm just gonna go in and I'm just gonna make it up, not make it up as I go, but I'm just gonna have this, it's gonna feel authentic to me, and I'm just gonna go in, and when I come this, I'm just gonna have the most influential decolonized research. And I wanted to center worldviews that feature mutualism and kinship, and that focus on interconnectedness in spiritual ways that defy empirical interpretations. So I started off by saying that I would, do my interviews and life history narratives using manual and effective coding, right? So I did Atlas TI, and then I manual coded, and then I did the auto coding, and I would get the themes, okay, which I did do that. And then I said that I would do, for the autoethnographies, I would do deductive and concept coding, okay? I did do that. And then I decided that I was going to do thematic framework, relationship matrix. Not so much. I did, but I didn't. Okay. And so this is how it actually went. I ended up with a coding collage, right? I thought, okay, Black woman, go in here and do this decolonizing study. But then I realized that I'm a Black woman who has a degree in English. I have advanced composition and rhetoric, right? And I have a degree in English education. And what I realized is that I have spent so much time in the academy. I did 50 something hours of graduate study in women's studies. I have spent so much time in the academy that it was hard for my brain to totally divest from some of the traditional methods of coding. And it was, to me, that was disappointing, I think. But it was also, going back to what Dr. Dillard said about the necessity of unlearning, it was confirmation, right? That even as decolonizing scholars, we can take, more traditional methods or the more accepted methods in the academy, and then put our own spin on them, which is what I did. So in that way, it's still decolonizing. But I just felt like I was so much further than I was with the decolonizing aspect of myself. And so that's what the image to the right is about, just being out here and trying to be free, and then still being tangled up inside of these systems. And so this is, from the dissertation, and it talks about how the coding collage played out in each phase of the data analysis. So in phase one, where I was looking at the interviews and my memos, I use Mishler's typology, which focuses on grappling with imposing power dynamics, conflicts, resistance, and discourse linguistics with deductive, inductive reflexivity, which focuses on relying equally on a priori codes, and which is my code book, and in vivo codes. And so I did both, okay? And then I also use the Mijas reflective memo writing for my own researcher memos. And that focuses on identifying key quotations that help illustrate participants' insights. And then in phase two, for the focus group and my memos, I did Polkinghorne's pragmatic mode of analysis, which focuses on making meaning through and eliciting implications from stories. I combine that with the rhizomatic mapping, which is identifying relationships within focus group data. And then again, Mijas reflective memo writing, but this time I was focused on comparing quotations from the same focus group transcript. So seeing how the relationship between the participants, co-researchers, were playing against each other in the focus group to make sure that I got the most accurate depiction of what their collective reality was, but also the conflicts, right? Also those challenges, those surprising moments where I was like, they didn't agree on that at all, okay? And then for phase three, where they wrote their autoethnographies and epistles, I used Leibov's model, which is focused on analyzing narratives of personal experience. And I partnered that with exo-autoethnography for my own collaborative autoethnography. And that was focused on exploring the transferences of intergenerational epistemologies, right? To see if, like how Dr. Holmes transferred her epistemology to me, if I was able to unintentionally or intentionally transfer my epistemology to my students who were being included in the study. So this is an example of what that looks like. And you'll see that I have a priori codes and I have in vivo codes. And then you'll see how I showed how many times they showed up in a particular focus group or interview. And then I have the quote, right? And so this particular quote is about Black teachers being instrumental in the Black liberation struggle. And so it says, I feel like they, Black teachers, do play a significant role in helping Black liberation because we are the ones that are always training somebody, always teaching, providing some type of educational skill to the community. Yeah, the students come to school to learn, but we know that the students want to and need to learn more than just what's in the classroom. So we make connections to the context that we're learning, to specific life skills and to life experiences that they're sharing, and let them know how they should be able to apply this new knowledge. Just really trying to push and drive their consistency to actually be able to do these things out in the real world. So we're really trying to prepare the next generation to have that liberation mindset, that as we're starting to move into this society where things are trying to become more diverse, inclusive, and equitable, our students prepare for that. And that's one thing that I feel like most teachers should really consider. And that was from an interview transcript. So, for me, this study validated and privileged participants' experiences, making them experts and collaborators in the process of gathering and interpreting the data. In the sense, I did not presume to be the authority figure who will collect, analyze, and situate the data, while the participant or the research merely represents the community being investigated. That, to me, that's not who I want to be as a scholar. So my three participants, they selected names on their ancestors, right? So it could be ancestors from the diaspora, or it could be ancestors within their family. And so my first participant chose Asa Philip Randolph as his ancestor that he wanted to honor with his pseudonym. And he said, I always have this, my door is open with my club members. Let them know if they need to talk to me, or just if they want, I got just some boxes in my classroom, and if they want to break stuff just to release some stress, just really trying to make these people realize that you are more than just what society wants you to be. You are what you design your life to be as. And I feel it's important that they have that avenue and that same culture that we had in the classroom, that same classroom that we were in 9 to 10 years ago. And Asa is a social studies teacher, and he has created a Black male activism club on his campus. Rebecca Nash, she chose her maternal grandmother's name to honor in the study. Rebecca is, she's now a 3rd grade teacher. She started off teaching high school English like me, and she saw that her babies couldn't read. And so now she's getting her master's degree, and she's teaching 3rd grade, so she can be instrumental on the ground of helping students develop early literacy skills. And so Rebecca says, I found my framework for understanding how a teacher moved and operated with you. Anytime I thought about teaching, how I would interact with my students and how I would move in my classroom, I was always thinking about you. And you being in your classroom, being under your leadership and your guidance directed my teaching experience 100%. So my desire to work and live and work within my community and was birthed in your class. I did not necessarily see that transition into teaching until my mother suggested that I do Teach for America because I went to Australia. I was supposed to stay there for a year. I didn't return. It didn't turn out like it was supposed to. So I came back. And so Rebecca, like me, was a reluctant teacher. I am not ashamed to say that I never wanted to be a teacher. I feel that life forced me into teaching, and it ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made. But I shared that quote because I think what we're missing is that some of the most influential Black teachers are not currently sitting in our teacher preparation programs. My third participant co-researcher selected William Grant Still, who's a famous Black composer and a Spring Middle winner. He's a classical musician and music teacher on his campus. And so he says, so I have this love and I want the best for these kids. Like, okay, y'all don't know what this was. And now y'all have this luxury of this building. So this is my vision for y'all. Take this seriously and just wanting them to be great. So I truly, when they walk in class, I have this love for them. It just grows. I started piano late and all my white teachers just based that on fact. It was like, there's no point of us, pursuing the study in piano. You started too late and that's just what it is. You need to come to terms with that, as opposed to my Black teacher who said, is this something you want to do? Okay, yeah, you are late, but we gotta work. And so he actually taught himself to play the classical piano. And so the 4 themes that I located in the study were holding Black students and ourselves accountable, holding space for Black students, helping Black students heal, and helping Black students escape. And some examples of quotes and codes that I derived from holding Black students and ourselves accountable, they just kept talking about accountability, right? They kept talking about their accountability as a teacher and how they saw me model that I was accountable to them, right? That I wasn't just in there and saying to them, well, I got mine, so you go get yours, right? Like they really wanted their students to know that I'm going to give you my best because you deserve my best. They talked about Black excellence. And one of the quotes was, I love you, but no excuses, right? They talked about professionalism and punctuality being something that we are demonstrating for our students, whether we mean to or not. And so as Black teachers, we've got to show up. We've got to show up and we've got to look the part and we've got to be there and we've got to be on time. And that teaching is the most important thing you can do. For holding space for Black students, we talked about age-appropriate warmth and sincerity. They talked about, just, going over and rubbing a student's shoulder when you know that they're down, paying attention to them, making sure, when they get their hair done and telling them how cute they look, asking how the members of their family are doing. They talked about creating a classroom community, how the students they know that we are a family inside this room. They talked about another Black teacher who told Rebecca Nash, she never told me I talk too much, right? Because a lot of Black women who have become teachers had that mark on their report card, right? Like talk too much in class. And so this teacher who held space for her never told her she talked too much. And then William Still Grant said about my classroom that he felt that I held space for him when I bought his lunches. And then helping Black students heal. There was always music in the classroom, culturally affirming music. There was a non-traditional classroom environment. So maybe we had lamps, we had furniture instead of the strobing fluorescent lights. There was a big focus on social emotional learning. So really reaching for their hearts before I asked for their hands. And then there was spirituality. So that was a non-religious spirituality, right? And so however they showed up, we honored it in that space. And then for helping Black students escape, we talked about culturally responsive pedagogy, fugitive pedagogy. They love the fact that we did Socratic seminars so much. And honestly, I think I'd like to come up with another title for that. But yeah, that's how we know it in the educational space. But each of them had a part of the answer. Right. So instead of, relying on, 1 or 2 students who do most of the talking, they felt like it was helping them to learn to escape some of those, multiplied oppressions when they learned to advocate and speak for themselves because they knew that the answer was in their mouths as well. Right. And then creating a teacher pipeline between teachers and students. So being transparent as I was with them about like, I want you to become a teacher and I'm going to show you what teaching is so that when you decide to enter that profession, that it's not, something that is mystical, right? It's open for you and you feel that you can do it. Your self-efficacy is there because I've exposed you to it. So my findings for research question 1. So all of them express positivity towards culturally responsive pedagogy, non-traditional learning environment, and intimacy amongst their classmates and social activism. According to their responses, the AP Literature classroom in question was filled with academic rigor, spirituality, and discipline tempered with grace and mercy. All these attributes independently and collectively are represented in both epistemology and African American pedagogical excellence. They deduce that holding Black students accountable is but half of the equation. So like when we are, looking at all these other theoretical frameworks, warm demand pedagogy, APE, the Black teacher tradition, they're about, holding the students accountable, right? Loving them and having high expectations of them. But in this study, the researchers said, we have to have that same understanding for ourselves, right? We have to make sure that we are living up to what we want our students to be. And so we've got to hold ourselves accountable for the ways in which we show up for and engage with our students. For research question 2, each co-researcher shared their personal understanding of being loved as me holding them accountable, reinforcing their sense of community and racial identity, providing them with space to be vulnerable and authentic, and fostering their passion for social activism. And so it was Asa Phillip, who talked about his experience in my classroom with my students' protests after the murder of Trayvon Martin. He said, I knew then that I wanted to be a teacher. I saw the way that you spoke to us Black men, and I saw the way that you encouraged us to, advocate for ourselves and to fight for our rightful place in this society. And I knew in your classroom that I wanted to be a teacher because of that. And so though none of them identified my practice as revolutionary at the time, they all remarked that it was uniquely life-changing and dynamic. Black teachers are traditionally nurturing and protective of Black children. That's consistent with their memories of me shielding them from their perceived harm in the classroom. And they remarked that me shielding them from that potential harm was also from fellow Black teachers and administrators. And so I don't want that part to get lost in this study, because again, it's that unlearning that Dr. Dillard talked about, right? We have so much unlearning to do. Anti-Blackness doesn't just come from non-Black people. And the co-researchers shared how my vulnerability and authenticity demonstrated a willingness to model critical thinking and fugitivity. So as I was trying to escape, I was right? Because there's a difference between somebody telling you how to escape and somebody showing you, right? So I left messages for them in the cornrows. I left messages for them in the quilts. And I said, this is how you get out. For research question 3, the co-researchers' responses to this question demonstrated the challenges of conducting memory-based inquiries. So 2 of the 3 co-researchers had no challenges implicating their AP literature experiences as influential in their decision to become teachers. But William Grant he said, I don't really remember that much about high school at all, right? I remember my relationship with you, but a lot of high school I blocked out, right? And so it was during the focus group, he asked them, can you guys help me remember some of this stuff? Tell me what you saw, right? And even as they were trying to help him remember some of the stuff, and he was saying, you know what? I do remember that. High school was just such a traumatizing time for me that I blocked out a lot of those things. As you're saying it's coming back to my memory. And then even in that conversation, they were talking about how they remember different aspects of it. Somebody had more information than the other person had. And then just watching them to remember together was amazing. And the data revealed that this was the least remarkable aspect of their AP literature teaching experience. While the co-researchers concluded the study with an understanding of how teaching them to teach in high school may have influenced their career decision-making process, each admitted not fully understanding it as high school seniors. And so for me, in my reflexivity, in my autoethnography piece, I talked about how I feel like I could have been more deliberate. Sometimes as teachers, we try something, we kind of just feel it in our spirit that we should be doing something. But on this side of life, especially after completing this study, if I were to work with teachers, Black teachers, I would show them how to be more deliberate about the decision-making and how to articulate better to their students exactly what the goal is for teaching them how to teach. And finally, research question 4. Of the 4 research questions, this one resonated with the co-researchers the most. Each of them noted how their culturally responsive curriculum, non-traditional learning environments, no-nonsense nurturing, and high expectations of students are directly related to their experiences in my AP literature class. Therefore, the findings revealed that their ability to recall experiences with African-American pedagogical excellence, Black belonging at school, the Black teaching tradition, and Endarkened feminist epistemology and fugitive pedagogy while in my classroom have helped the co-researchers locate themselves within those frameworks. And that is critical. They now see themselves within those frameworks, right? So now they understand better what I was doing, but now they understand better what they are doing, right? So they're not just modeling it, they understand theoretically what they are doing and why it matters. And so to me, that was huge. And so for the final piece, in my autoethnography, I wrote it as a call and response. And this is kind of modeled after chapter 2 on Teaching to Transgress, where Bell Hooks and Gloria Jean Watkins have a conversation, right? And so whenever I ask myself questions, few answers align with who I am becoming, only more questions. My soul echoes, what if they refuse to accept you? Who are they? Who are you beyond the academic gaze? Is there still room for love in your praxis? What is the work your spirit demands of you? Lastly, have I made assumptions or generalizations beyond the scope of the data? And when I found myself riddled with anxiety and self-doubt, I challenged myself to remember who I am and whose I am. I am a child of the village, and I am a keeper of tradition. There are traditions beyond those that matter in the academy. There are ancient ways of knowing that do not diminish me or require me to diminish others. I want to do good while doing good research. I care about what I study because I care about who I study. I hope you do too. My agenda is liberation, yours included, but especially mine. In terms of demonstrating revolutionary love, the participant researchers remember me as holding them accountable and myself for personal and academic excellence, holding space for them to practice moving and thinking as free Black people, helping them to heal from personal challenges and helping them escape from racism and systemic oppression. At least 10 years since high school graduation, each participant co-researcher was able to accurately recall specific details of lessons and classroom conversations, even when they could not remember much about high school. Such high levels of memory accuracy suggest that high school students actually can evaluate and interpret their interactions with teachers as influential to their career decisions. So all three of them initially grappled with the terminology revolutionary love, right? They each could in detail express receiving unconventional type of love from me, but they felt and saw revolutionary love even when they couldn't explain it. And so through reflection, William and Rebecca suggested that their experiences in my classroom resulted from my non-traditional pathways. So the two teachers who took non-traditional pathways felt that I was the kind of teacher I was because I did not traditional teaching program. And so that's something to really consider. Asa traced his decision to become a teacher directly to his experiences in my classroom, and he completed a traditional teacher prep program. However, William and Rebecca did not attribute their decisions to become teachers to their experiences in my Rather, William and Rebecca refer to themselves as reluctant teachers, as do I. For those two participant researchers, becoming a teacher resulted from feeling coerced by life circumstances into becoming a teacher. As a result, like me, they both entered teaching through alternative certification programs. And so I think, as we think through this work and where we want to focus, obviously there's tremendous focus on traditional teacher preparation programs. But I think that as we're thinking of ways to mitigate the Black teacher shortage, alternative certification programs, there's a lot to offer there, and we really need to think on that. And finally, each participant co-researcher pointed back to their experiences in my classroom as where they learned how to incorporate the spirituality of Endarkened feminist epistemology, no-nonsense nurturing of African-American pedagogical excellence, and fugitive pedagogy in the form of literacy and love as critical components of the Black liberation struggle. They actually pondered in the focus group whether revolutionary love as teaching praxis is something that can be taught to pre-service teachers. So my recommendations for practice and policy are providing pre-service Black teachers with the rich historical context of Black education and evolving roles of Black teachers from pre-emancipation to the present. You can go through an entire teacher preparation program as a Black woman and never hear anything about Black teachers. That's a problem. Black educators who see themselves as part of a Black teaching tradition of African-American pedagogical excellence and fugitive pedagogy are better equipped to help Black students locate themselves within the collective struggle for Black liberation. Black teachers should intentionally involve their Black students in their planning and curriculum decision-making processes. One of the things that Rebecca remarked in her interview was that I actually took them to the standards. I took them to the Georgia Department of Education website, and I reviewed the standards for English with them. And I showed them exactly what we're going to be working on and why. To her, that made it accessible, right? She understood me, she trusted me because she could see the way that I was moving. And she knew that it made her a better student because I was relying on what I was supposed to do for her. And so she remarked that I also informed them that the standards are the basement, right? So the standards are the bottom. This is what I have to cover with you. But a part of that fugitivity, a part of me helping you escape is that I've got to demand far more than of you in this space. And so share stories of Black educators who may be hidden figures in American education to encourage your Black students to see themselves as integral parts of this ancestral lineage of Black educational excellence. Find, as a Black teacher, find an ancestor educator to guide you along your journey as a warrior of light. And so mine has been Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown, okay, founder of the Palmer Memorial Institute in Sedalia, North Carolina. Allow their stories to hold you accountable as you hold your students accountable. Black teachers must learn to hold space for their Black students and help them heal. Begin each year by creating a classroom code of ethics. Allow the students to select the principles to guide their interactions with each other and their teacher. Some of the principles selected by the classroom represented in this study are advocacy, authenticity, compassion, love, trust, and vulnerability. One of the things that we would recite in my classroom is a poem, and it's the Mayan concept of In Lakesh, you are my other me. If I do harm to you, I do harm to myself. If I love and protect you, I love and protect myself. And that was one of the things that we would recite to each other inside this classroom space. Study your Black students and learn about their diurnal realities beyond your classroom. When they are hungry, feed them. Partner with local nonprofit organizations to connect students with wraparound services whenever possible. Locate trauma-informed practitioners and you become a trauma-informed practitioner. And get some social media groups. In the age of social media, you can join anybody's group for free. So there's no excuse for not holding yourself accountable. Cultivate communities of care for Black students within their classrooms and for the Black teachers who love them. Be revolutionary. My recommendations for future research are a qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method study of the same research questions with a larger sample size from the same population. I have more students who became teachers, but again, for the sake of time and convenience, I chose the 3. That could shed new light in these research questions. Another viable option is to actually do case studies on these same participant co-researchers' classrooms and see how their students are experiencing their classrooms. A comparative study of the 3 participant co-researchers' experiences with other Black teachers and non-Black teachers will offer additional perspectives from which to extend the findings of this study, and an exploratory study of whether students will participate in teaching as a profession. So, you know how we have the CTAE pathway programs at schools, whether those students choose to enter teaching profession upon graduation from high school. So these are some of the current and future publications that have been based on this study. And so last year I published an autoethnography, Carrying a Double Load, a Black Woman Doctoral Student Experience, Decolonizing Educational Research. Then this year I published the biography of Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown in the Palgrave Handbook of Educational Thinkers. And then this year, I also co-published with one of the co-researchers, Answering the Call of Revolutionary Love Through Literature, a collaborative autoethnography framed in Toni Morrison's Beloved. And then the one that is under review right now is the second of the 3 that I will write with the co-research, the participant co-researchers. It was all a dream, inspiring the next generation of Black male educator activists through revolutionary love. And that will be in repertoires of resistance, pedagogical dreaming from the classroom to the streets. Thank you.
Very, very nice, Shekema. Great job. Applause all around.
Thank you, Doc.
So now we will move into the questions with the committee members. And I will begin. Your description of revolutionary teaching focuses on dynamic engagement with students. Which classroom practices can be learned from your study for practitioners to use for deliberately connecting with students as you have described?
Okay, so I think what I heard you ask me is what are some classroom strategies all teachers can incorporate in their classroom to connect with their students in this way?
Yes.
Okay. So I would say it sounds simple, but one of the main things I do is try to call everybody by their first name. I would say before the end of the first week. My goal is by the third day, I've at least memorized one of my groups of students by name. And to say their name correctly, right? To not say, oh, you know, it's so hard. I don't know how to pronounce that, right? And I'm deliberate about saying, tell me how to say your name. And you'll notice that a lot of minoritized students will say, well, it's okay, I understand, because I did that, right? People would call me Shamika, Shekema, all kinds of stuff, right? And I would just kind of like shrink down on the inside. I remember being in class and I went to school with the same students from 4th grade to graduation. And so I knew exactly whose name was in front of mine and I knew whose name was behind mine. And they would say the person in front of me and I would just shrink in the chair because I was one of few Black students at the school. And they would just call my last name instead. That is so reductionist and it's so harm inflicting on students. So something as simple as just learning their names, right? And so what I say to my students when they're tempted to say like, you don't have to, and I say of all the names in the world, that's what heaven saw fit to call you. And so I'm going to honor that. Who am I to defy that? And so I practice saying their names. So that's one thing. Another thing is just to pay attention, to know when their head is down, right? To say, are you okay? And not immediately start to get your head up. Why are you sleeping in my class? It's not disrespect to you. You have no idea what that child is going through. And so I, this year in my classroom, I actually have 3 statements. They're laminated and I just have them at the bottom of the, you know, what do you call it? The board, where we project. And it 3 simple statements. Do you know I love you? Do you feel loved? And what do you need from me? And so when I see somebody sleeping, I go rub them on the back and I say, hey, baby, you okay? And of course, they're going to say yes, because they've been trained to do that, right? And I say, what do you need from me to help you stay awake? What do you need from me to help you stay awake? And so those are just some basic things. It's just honoring their humanity. Honoring their humanity. And just realizing that there are times when no matter how hard you want to teach the skill, you have to love the people first. You have to build them up on the inside, because there's no way somebody's going to learn what you're trying to teach them with all that pain and hunger and, you know, physiological needs. They're competing. And so their inability to pay attention is not about you. But if you take it personally, then you'll never be able to assist them. So just things like that, right? Having the kids make decisions about, you know, how they want to learn. You as the expert obviously have more control over what they learn, but allowing them to engage in the decision-making process. So even if it's something as simple as due dates, right? So when I give my kids the work and I say, how long is it going to take you to do this? Instead of saying, here's a due date. And if you're late, 0, right? How long is it going to take you to do this? And I let them decide as a class, like, okay, theoretically we have work, we have all these things. Okay, Ms. D, can we turn this in next Friday? And you'd be surprised how allowing them to practice with agency in a non-threatening environment just boosts their self-efficacy. If teachers understood that if students know that you'll fight for them, they'll fight for you. And to me, that's the answer to classroom management. So those are just some things that I can think of off the top of my head today.
Thank you. We'll just go round robin, and
Okay.
instead of me asking my next question, we'll just go around the circle.
Is that me next then?
Sure.
Okay. Great job, Shekema. As you know, I've learned so much from you. And my question is, what have you learned about yourself through this dissertation process? Throughout the process, I've said to you and others, and I know that other mentors say that it's a journey and it's not always about the finished product, but the journey along the way. So what have you learned about yourself?
So for those who don't know, this is my second time attempting a doctoral journey. So the first time I did half of a PhD program, and then I got breast cancer. And so for me, this was about finishing what I started, right? The pandemic came and everybody starts thinking about the mortality. And you're like, before I leave here, and so I learned that I can do this work. I'm learning and I'm new, but I can stand with the best of them. I have read, I have written, I have surrounded myself by phenomenal scholars, and I don't have imposter syndrome anymore. I can do this work because I live this work. And if people who don't live this work can do this work, then surely I can. I have learned that it's one thing to study something, to write about it. It's another thing to live it. And I always want to be the type of scholar who lives the work I do. And that's what I would just say, that sometimes we want to do, I always wanted to do decolonizing work, but I'm not sure that I believed in myself as a Black scholar and a Black woman enough to engage in this type of work. The pushback would have taken me out. It would have taken me out. But I have survived too many things in life to lay down now. And so I think that's what I learned about myself.
All right, excellent job. Kudos to you, and your passion definitely shows through your work. My question is, you mentioned that your classroom was different for these students, and even, you know, a haven, so to speak, for them, even though they had other Black teachers and were in a setting where there was other also Black administrators. So my question to you is, I guess, how did you go on this path of being able to show this revolutionary love to your students, whereas other Black teachers and administrators aren't on that same path? And what would you suggest, or what would make them come around to teaching and treating students in a different manner?
Okay, so I think I heard you ask me about some of the challenges we faced in that classroom space with pushback from other Black teachers and administrators, and why I believe that happened. And I think was the last part about how I came to do this work in spite of all of that. Okay, thank you. So part of it, this class, when I say this classroom was special, I mean that we aren't the only ones that knew that. So in 2011, I actually won a National Teaching Award as I was teaching these students. And I won the Milken National Educator Award. It's called the Oscars of Teaching. And you can't apply for the award. They have to find you. And so as I was doing the work with these students, we were blogging and we were tweeting. Every day my students had to go home and tweet. They would use hashtag TIL Today I Learned, and they were teaching other people as they learned, right? And so they were engaging in some kind of way. The Milken Foundation got wind of the work that we were doing, and I won that award. And CNN came to do a segment on this classroom. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation came to do a segment on this classroom. The state of Georgia recorded me teaching all 10, professional teaching standards, and teachers in Georgia watch me every year, to learn how to do, to ace their teacher evaluations. And so it was clear to not only, at first we didn't always believe, but when people started to notice it, it was obvious to us all that there is truly something special happening in here. But with that, everybody's not happy about that, right? And so like there were people who were angered that we were receiving all of this attention. And in hindsight, I could imagine that if you're a teacher and, you know, you have to be stuck with your classes in the hallway, there's no movement in the classroom because there are cameras and there are all these things. I could understand how that, as a professional, that probably was frustrating. You know, when I was in the moment, I didn't recognize it, but maturity, right? I can look back and see that the teachers who were impacted by that, they probably were like, we're sick of this woman, right? And these kids, why are we always having to be stuck in our classroom, you know, with the same kids for 3 hours while somebody's in there recording her classroom? But what I want to go back to is the anti-Blackness. Anti-Blackness, and I talked about Afro-pessimism in the study as well. That's one of my key terms in my study. And Afro-pessimism is, it just describes the way that anti-Blackness exists in every sphere of society. And the darker the skin, the more horrific, the more challenging the lived experience is. The lighter the skin, or the closer the proximity to whiteness, the more freedom you have, the more freedom to move, right? And so because of that, within our community, we have internalized colorism. We have internalized self-hatred. And so in this district where I taught, it was predominantly Black, but I had an administrator who said, you know, I have the highest suspension rate in the district, bragging, right? And so this is the space that I worked in. And so for me, when my students walked out in protest of Trayvon Martin, and they were the first kids in the country to do it, their principals tried to suspend them. And so my students, we had been watching movements. We had been watching Chavez and Huerta. We had been watching the Birmingham Children's Movement. We had been watching the Young Lords and the Brown Berets and the Chicano Moratorium and La Raza. We had been watching all these things in our classroom. And so when it happened, the students said, we know exactly what to do. And they said to me, we don't want you to be in trouble, so we're gonna put your chair outside and close the door. And when I would look in, they had segments of the classroom. One group was studying the student handbook. One group was contacting the news media. One group, you know, they published things in the San Francisco Bay View. They were in national publications advocating for themselves. And so in that way, they pushed back. And so I would always say to them, all my heroes are Black women on wanted posters. And I would say to them that if and this is where fugitive pedagogy asks the question, what is the relation of the American education system to Black students? If I do my job correctly, I should have every expectation that at some point, one day, I'm going to be escorted out of the building in handcuffs, if I do my job correctly. And I know that's the risk that I take. Because if I do my job well, I am an enemy of the state. And it should not be so, but that is the truth. And so my strength came from learning the stories of Black educators who fought all the odds, like Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown, like Virginia Estelle Randolph. And I stand on those stories. And that's why I say I am a child of the village.
Thank you. I'll start the next round of questions. So the term love is like the term leadership. It's been defined by many scholars. I mean, it's not doesn't mean the same thing, but it's been interpreted by many different people in many different ways. And when heard, it's interpreted by different people. So you chose to focus on revolutionary love with the perspective of kinship and the familial connection. So first, describe why you chose that perspective, and then explain how receiving it influenced the individuals in becoming educators?
So I chose the word love because I'm a believer. That's where then darkened feminism and the spirituality piece comes in. I'm a believer. And I believe that love is where true power is. And I believe that my command to love being the greatest command, I believe that, and I take that to heart. And so when I say to my students that I love them, I mean, I see you in all that you are, not in spite of your Blackness, because of your Blackness. I see you. I hear you. I hear your strength. I hear your strivings. I hear your pain, even in your silence, right? I hear the pain in the way that you choose to moderate your words, or you choose to audit the things you say to me because you're so afraid that you speaking your truth is going to, result in some irreparable harm to your body, to your mind. And when I say I love my students, I say to them that I need them, that we are connected, and that I cannot be free unless they're free. And that, part of my life's work involves them. And so I cannot do this without them. And so when I say to them, I love them, that is what I mean, that I will stand between them and anything that endangers them to the best of my ability. And so I think that when I think about this love, it really is a spiritual journey. And I think that's what Black teachers do differently. We don't try to separate our spirituality from who we are as teachers. We embrace it and we draw our strength from it. And so that's how I would answer that question. Did I miss part of the question, Doc?
Oh, well, to how it influenced them in becoming educator, having received it.
Okay. I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I do see that some of them are on the call. Would it be appropriate to ask them?
No.
No? Okay. I'm like, they're here. They can
So
speak.
let me frame it a different way. Let's think about it in terms of the teacher shortage.
Mhm.
How could it be used in recruiting teachers at this time of teacher shortage? How can it be applied
Okay.
with different people?
Okay. So first and foremost, I think that, looking at the teacher shortage from the historical lens of understanding how it occurred, right? When we talk about the teacher shortage without bringing in the data concerning Brown and integration and how it, caused this great harm to the Black community and to the Black teaching profession, most of the people that we know have been educated after Brown. So we never saw what it was like. All we have are the stories, people like Vanessa Siddle Walker, who, wrote The Lost Education of Horace Tate, or Hey Professor, the story of Dr. Ulysses Spires. Like that's all we know. We don't know anyone who lived in an age where you went to school and everybody was like you. And so there was this shared collective identity. There was this community desire to uplift, right? And so everybody knew, like, we're here for business. We're here to learn because this is liberation for us. Education is liberation, and it's for liberation. And so I think that sense of urgency has been lost. And until we get back that sense of urgency, then nobody's going to want to join the profession. And so I think those two things are connected. I think that Black teachers have to understand what their respective roles are in our community uplifting. We are not going to survive this without Black teachers. But because most Black teachers were educated in colonized systems inside of integration, too few of them know that. And I think it starts with that, the historical context, and helping them to understand what their role is in the Black liberation struggle.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Shekema, I only had a couple of comments more so on the written portions.
Okay.
So one of the things that after I read everything, you know, and when the students, especially when the students talked about Trayvon Martin and their protest and things that they took part in, and one of the students, I think, mentioned something about taking AP classes and wasn't sure if they were, you know, if it was going to be difficult or what that situation was going to be like. One of the questions I had, and today you showed pictures of your classroom of those students in the class. I would have liked to have had a little bit more information in terms of that high school.
Okay.
You know, like the size of the high school, how many students attended, the ethnicity of the classroom, because I kind of wondered, you know, were these students all Black that were in your classroom? Were these students one Black student amongst a sea of white students? Just to kind of get a setting and understanding a little bit better of, you know, what that high school and what that time looked like for them.
Thank you. I'll be happy to add that. Thank you, Doc.
And then one other thing I wanted to comment on at the beginning of your lit review, you talked about African American language.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, African American language is a part of the African American community. So as you discussed African American language, and I was expecting, whenever I looked at, or when you presented your students' transcripts,
Mm-hmm.
Their presentation was more general American English usage, with some Southern dialectical input. So I'm not sure why you discuss the African American language when I really didn't see that utilization in their communication. I know it's a part of the culture, but it didn't seem like it was relevant really, because it wasn't something I needed to know about in terms of, oh yes, you're not talking about morphology and syntax and phonology of these speakers, and they basically utilized general American English. So it was kind of like drawing me thinking, oh, there's going to be some code switching in those transcripts that I might have some difficulty understanding or interpreting, when it really wasn't there. So I'm not sure if that really needs to be a part, if it's not really something that impacts your analysis.
Can I answer that, Doc?
Sure.
Okay, so what I talked about was, so I'm an English teacher, and I'm a member of the National Council of Teachers of English, and we have a statement called "Students' Rights to Their Own Language," and that was birthed by Black English teachers within the profession, just saying that we do not deny our students rights to speak their own language inside of our classrooms. And I talked about the ways it was privileged inside of that classroom. So remember that teachers are writing these autoethnographies and these epistles. And so as they came in their teacher voice, you may not see very many instances of African-American language, but I was clear that I was not going to redact those, that I was not going to edit those out. But it was more about the space that we created inside of the classroom and me honoring students' rights to their own language within that classroom. I also have spaces inside of my study where I said things that were using African American language, and I wanted to honor those as well. So not necessarily from the participants, although there are some instances in there, there are spaces in my study where I said things in African American language that I did not want to remove, because I want to honor my right to my own language as well.
Okay.
Okay, and Shekema, I have a list of edits that I'll just email you.
Okay.
That tells you, there's a half of a parenthesis here, or there
Yeah,
insert the
I have
word
a few as well.
in. So we'll just email you those edits for the manuscript. And I just want to compliment you. You've heard me say this before, and I want to repeat that you are such a talented writer. You have a gift for using language and lexicon, and I hope that you will always be confident in expressing your expertise to help others understand sophisticated ideas that you have discussed this morning, and help others translate research to practice where they are.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc.
Okay, well, Dr. Elder, do you want to sign us off, finish us for the morning?
Did you say sign us off? Did we
Yeah,
go into a waiting room or away from Shekema?
right, into a waiting room.
Sorry, I have turned the fan on and I couldn't hear very well. Okay, so I'm going to put Shekema. I'm trying to move us, sorry, into.
And
Are
I
you
will
able-
stop. I will
are you
stop
able-
the
Oh, sorry.
recording right now.
Okay,
Well, if you guys go into the breakout room, it won't record you. It'll just record what they're saying in here.
Oh, okay. So we will go into a breakout room.
yes, I'm trying. I'm sorry. Breakout room. Okay, you all should be in the breakout room. Signed.
Wait, I need to leave the breakout room. You put me in the breakout room. Hold up. Let me see what you did, Doc. Okay, let's see. You just have to join them inside the breakout room.
I was gonna say, I don't see them anymore.
They went to the breakout room. I can
Okay.
put you in here. Let me see if I can find your name on here.
I thought I was unmuted. Sorry, Shekema. Thank you to everyone in the audience. We're so glad that everyone joined and to be here with Shekema. And we will leave it open for you all to share because I know that everyone wants to. Is Dr. McFarland back?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there she is. Okay, there's Dr. McFarland. We met and discussed Shekema, and I'll let Dr. McFarland.
Yes, and Dr. Akbari is back too. There she is. Okay. All right. Well, Shekema, we are delighted to let you know that the committee unanimously approved your dissertation defense, and we are delighted to welcome you to the Academy as our colleague, Dr. Dunlap.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations from me, Dr. Elder. You earned it and you worked hard and proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Excellent job. And I want to second what Dr. McFarland had said earlier about your writing. I read lots of things. I have lots of students and read thesis work and do reviews for many different journals, and your intro and to your dissertation just gave me goosebumps. And so that doesn't happen very often. So again, your passion and shows through your work, and I look forward to seeing what things you do in the future. And it has been honestly a pleasure serving on your committee.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So Dr. Dunlap, where do we go from here? You make the revisions as proposed by your committee, and then you submit to the ProQuest. And I'm pretty sure that you already started on that. So you'll use the revised draft and manuscript to create that for them to put in publishing. And then you will graduate and we will celebrate. Did I forget anything, Dr. McFarland?
Nope, that's the process. The committee members will send you our pieces that we mentioned, the edits, and then Dr. Elder will be the conduit to Robin, and you have your checklist of getting all of those pieces into ProQuest after the final in the final form, and then the other paperwork to Robin, and then we will celebrate in the summer.
I'm going to sign off, Dr. Dunlap, because I have to go to recess duty. So
Okay.
I'm going to dismiss myself. However, you all, since you're a co-host, you should be able to end the meeting so that you can visit with your friends and family to celebrate with your community. So
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Dr. Dunlap, I would like to ask you about the recording, because I too will be signing off. So if I just leave the room, will it still be recording for you?
So I think that we are in Dr. Elder's Zoom link. So if I have once I finish the meeting, then it will process and send to her cloud. So as long as I stay on here, I'm going to stop recording though, just because I just want to take in a moment and not, record people's thoughts. But once I close out the meeting, it will let her know that it's ready in the cloud.
Great. Okay, well, congratulations again. It's a big day, and you've done phenomenal work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.